All right, thank you so much. All right, you all, let's begin. My name is Carlos Perez, and I am educational consultant for the Center for Teaching Excellence. And with me, we have CJ, a senior educational consultant at the CTE as well. CJ, wave at us. Where you are? There we go. And then we have the privilege to have Dr. Dave Toback with us, a professor of physics and astronomy. Dr. Toback, wave at us somewhere in the crowd. Where are you? Wave at us. There you are. All right. So together we are going to walk you through this. So let's begin right away. See, so the goal for today, we are going to take an approach of combining that Canvas knowledge, technical skills, pedagogical skills, put it all together so we can get that ultimate student experience. We want you all to take one tool, two tools that you are willing to use on that first day of school. Again, we're not expecting you all to become masters of Canvas today, but hopefully you walked out of here with that one skill that you are committed to use starting Tuesday, hopefully Wednesday. So here are our learning objectives for today. Again, we're gonna explore some course design techniques to begin with so we can give that pedagogical background. Then we're gonna share with you a strategy, for example, creating groups in Canvas. We're gonna create some groups. We're gonna look at some differentiated due dates and accommodations for students and how you can implement those. We'll look at some accessibility best practices and how you can make sure you're applying those. And then finally, we're going to develop that understanding of a student experience. How do we explore and evaluate a student course and make sure that we are delivering the best student experience? What you will receive with you today, you will walk away with this slide deck. There will be some resource guide and the recording, which will be shared with you all in a week from today. So CJ, at this time, will share with you all the resources guide in the chat so you have it with you. And the very first thing you will see in that resources guide, it is the copy to this presentation for you. Thank you so much, CJ. And the link is in the chat for you all to use. Additionally, if you have any questions after this presentation is over, you are still confused, we will share with you also some contact information at the end of this presentation. All right. So the sections so here is an overview of how we're gonna group this up. So we're gonna start with some course design exploration. Then we're gonna dive into some strategies to ensure we're using Canvas for student engagement, for example, group work, differentiating due dates. We're gonna look at some accessibility, and we're going to explore a course from the student view perspective. So let's begin with some course design exploration. Exploration of course design is important because it allows you to create this variety of content that you can implement with your students, and you ensure that you're engaging as many students as possible. By thinking about course design, you are creating this avenue for student success. You are creating this avenue for students to be engaged in your course. And then finally, we have this, again, it is all about the student. We're keeping that student in perspective. All right. So with me, I have an honor to introduce Dr. Toback, professor of physics and astronomy, and he has volunteered to show his course and how he has worked in this course, this Canvas course, and has refined a lot of these courses. So Dr. Toback, you want to take over?
Sure. Howdy, y'all. Okay, so I've been doing online learning stuff for, I guess it's almost 20 years now. And I really like the online tools that we have, Canvas, and I happen to use a thing called Perceptive a lot. I think it's really powerful. On the other hand, I think it's very easy to pretend that it's going to create learning and it's going to fix all the problems and going to make it easy. And my sense is that online learning and these massive online courses are going to replace teachers with the same level of success that we replaced teachers with back when the printing press was invented, and they all thought they just put us out of business. So what matters to me is how one thinks about the course. As a professor, I, of course, like listening to myself talk all the time. On the other hand, the studies are very clear that that's mostly a waste of time, mostly a waste of their time, and in some sense, a waste of my time. What really matters is the engagement. And you can get a lot of the engagement in the course when you're actually talking with them. But the other idea is to have some real engagement with the online and to use where computers are powerful to do the things that are expensive if you had to have a person do it. So the course that I teach is Astronomy and Physics 109, which is a intro course for non-majors. The course was designed to be all the stuff you actually wanted to know about physics, as opposed to the stuff that you had to take when you were in high school or in college. I don't want to be ugly, but I just really don't care. I don't find it that exciting to understand the speed of a block at the bottom of an inclined plane. I just don't. I want to know what are black holes and what is dark matter and what's the Big Bang and, can I make a black hole? Could I throw it at somebody? Those kinds of things. And so the question is, how does one go about teaching that? So I'm going to walk you through the course organization guide, at least part of the course organization guide, and the method to my madness. There is a lot of idea in college that what really matters is the grades, and we're supposed to be gatekeepers. And I don't like it. My sense is that what we're supposed to do is teach students how to be awesome, how to be grown-ups. Pretending that they came in that way, I think, is stupid. And I think if they, forgive my language, if they kick ass and take names, they ought to get grades that show it. So it's very important to me. I like to give a lot of A's, but I want them to work really hard to earn them. Okay, so I tell them at the beginning, I do give lots of A's. You can go online and see what my grades are. You can see the grade distributions, and you will see that there are a lot of A's. You will also see that there are a lot of F's because people just don't do the work. So from where I sit, I tell them at the beginning, you do the work. I'm going to make it worth your while. And if you blow off the easy stuff, we're going to make, you're just going to get a lousy grade. So that takes a lot of conviction to be able to do it. The problem is that students have an enormous amount of time and energy and creativity to game the system instead of learning. So we've had to put in some real time to make that work. So the way we do that is with the concept of mastery learning. So in my course, and every course will be different, I don't have exams. I have paper assignments, which I do in Peerceptive. We have reading question assignments, which is teaching people how to ask good questions. We have quizzes at the end of the chapters, and we have assignments about how to draw diagrams. This is about how particles interact and do what they do. And the idea is that each one of these sets of things are different, and they're all done on Canvas. All right, so I'll say a little bit more, and then I'll allow for some questions. So the deal is, and many of the students love this, and many of the students hate this, but either way, this is the deal. The average score in the assignment, so you take all of the assignments in one of those 4 modules, you get an average grade for that module, and the lowest of the 4 grades is what you get for the course. Okay. So in other words, just doing the hard stuff and blowing off the easy stuff, not okay. Just doing the easy stuff and doing it really, really well is not going to make you somehow get an A. So what that means is that we need for them to keep doing it until they are excellent. I'm not interested in perfection. I'm interested in excellence. That's what we're supposed to be teaching at this university. A&M is one of the great universities, and our kids, the top kids here, are as smart as they are anywhere. And I've been at a whole bunch of snooty Northeastern places, and I say that with absolute comfort. They're just as good, and when they do the work, they're fabulous. So I'm not going to go into detail here, but the papers are done in Perceptive. If you haven't used Perceptive and you can use papers, it's fabulous. It's got some things that I, of course, would like better, but that's mostly because I'm a pain in the ass. There are a whole bunch of quizzes. We have warm-up quizzes where they just got to keep taking them till they get it right. You don't get points for doing it. You just got to know how to do it. There are the reading questions and the end of chapter questions. So if people want to ask about these, I'm happy to walk through it, but these are just all standard things in Canvas. I think I'll just leave this here. So one of the things that enforces mastery learning is that we say we're not allowing students to go ahead if they haven't mastered the first stuff. One of the things that I have learned over and over again is if a student is struggling in chapter 8, and if I sit with them for an hour to 2 hours to 3 hours to really getting them unstuck, what I typically learn is they just don't understand chapter 5. All right. And once we go back and fix chapter 5, they look at chapter 8 and they go, oh, is that what they mean? So I just said, enough of this. So what we do is we only make the quizzes open when you have mastered the previous one. Any questions about that? Don't everybody speak at once.
And Dave, I'm assuming you use Canvas as a tool for doing that. You set it so they have to have a 50% or 100% rather in order to open the quiz, subsequent quizzes.
Yes, Canvas does this very nicely. You can also say, look, I want chapter 4 to have 4 quizzes, A, B, C, and D, and you got to have a 50% on the average, or you got to have 90% on the average. Or if you just say, they got to get 100 on this quiz, I can have this quiz by itself, and the release criteria says you can't go on to the next quiz until you got 100%. So it depends on what matters and what doesn't. Other questions? I'm seeing a hand.
Hi, yeah, my name is Mariam. I'm just wondering if doing this as a way of for them to be able to pass the next quiz, they have to have 100 in the first one. Wouldn't we be asking them to memorize instead of learning the concept?
So it depends. So the question is, what is your quiz? What is your quiz about? Okay, the question is, what is your quiz about? And it's very easy to make quizzes that ask them to have memorized stuff. I think that much memorization is not useful. On the other hand, there is certain memorization that is useful. And so the idea is to design the quizzes and the set of assignments such that you can break those two things into pieces. Things that they do need to memorize, they can take the quizzes over and over again as a good way of learning things. So that way, instead of memorizing it with flashcards, they get to use it over and over again. I don't know, does that answer the question you were asking?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Other questions? Yeah, so I have mixed feelings about memorizing. I haven't memorized my children's names, right? I didn't have to memorize them. I just used them so much that at this point I know them. On the other hand, if you ask me, what's the name of the 56th element in the periodic table, I'd say, I know how to look that up. this making sense? So the point is that we have quizzes. I want mastery learning, how one defines what you need to learn. That's the pedagogy for your course. For me, I have said I want them to be really good at these things before they can move on to the next thing, and Canvas does that nicely for me. All right, so let's move on to the next one. So one of the things that I have learned is that students have an enormous amount of energy, especially the students who get into A&M. If you got into A&M, you are either really smart or you are really hardworking. Okay. Every so often we get some that are both, but you're going to be at least one of those. Because if you're not smart and you're not hardworking, you're not going to college. And what we have learned is that there are students who, rather than try to understand the concepts or what it is they're teaching, they would rather take the quiz 500 times and guess. All right, so if you give them a quiz with 8 multiple, with 8 options, and it's select all that, all that are relevant, they will try 200 options rather than ask for help. So what we have done is we have said for some quizzes, you get 5 free attempts, and we're going to keep your highest grade. Period. So you want to work harder? We got your back. I do not like having my courses in the science. I don't think it's fair for the Star Trek geeks to get all the A's and all the English majors to get the F's. That's not fair. If you want to do the work, you should be able to get the grade you want. On the other hand, I'm not interested in brute memorization or guessing. So what we do is we say you get 5 attempts, but if you can't get it in 5 attempts, then you got to ask for help. Okay. So the way we do that is we have a specific quiz form. There are step-by-step instructions. This we don't do on Canvas, but it uses the Canvas interface to gather the information. So we say, which quiz are you struggling with? Which question? What are all the answer options? Whether you put yes or no. What's the feedback that was in the question? And tell us why. Because what I really care about is why they gave a yes or no for each. And then if I have that, usually I can tell what's troubling them. Questions? All right. So, and this is my last slide. I make a big deal out of this. I'm very comfortable with the students not liking me. As an old gray white man, I don't need the students to like me. What I do need is for them to be respectful and to learn. And if I can really get through to 5–10% and show them that it's interesting and exciting, then I've really succeeded. So what we want is to teach them how to be grown-ups, how to ask for help, how to ask good questions, how to learn getting good at going from not understanding to understanding. So we are giving them a model of how to talk to grown-ups, how to talk to professors, which a lot of families, especially the first-gen students, have not learned that. And if we are thoughtful about how we get them to ask, we can be more helpful. So this is what I got. I'm happy to answer questions, but the idea is that Canvas is a very nice tool to allow for mastery learning, to do it over and over and over again until you get mastery, and to give grades that reflect not effort, not prior knowledge, but where are you today? Did you master it at the excellent level? Then I think you should get an A, and mastery learning helps us do that, and Canvas allows us to make that happen.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tobek. That was great. All right, we're gonna open the floor for any questions. Any questions we may have at this point.
When everyone speak at once again.
All right, no questions. All right, you did a great job. You did a great job presenting all of this. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. All right, you all. So now we're going to move on to the next part of our presentation, and we are going to kind of talk about a lot of the things that were mentioned during the presentation. We're going to talk about course design. Before we start talking about Canvas, we want to kind of do a quick review of pedagogy. We're going to do a quick review of pedagogy, and we'll start by talking about backward design. When you start designing your class, you really want to start with a goal in mind. What is the ultimate goal? Why am I teaching this? Why do I want students to learn? What is it that they need to learn? Miriam asked a question about the quiz. Okay, what type of quiz should I use? You know, not all the quizzes are going to be about memorization. Some quizzes are going to be testing something else. So that's why it's so important for you to think about course design. So with backward designing, what you do, you start with your learning objectives or learning outcomes. That is your starting point. What do students need to learn? After, you go into aligning your assessments to your objectives. So how am I going to test for those objectives? How am I going to allow students to know whether they master the content or not? Finally, after you've done that alignment, then you can start picking all these cool instructional strategies. How am I going to help students achieve these learning outcomes? How am I going to help students succeed in these assessments? Okay, so that is backward designing. So this is how you can start designing your course in a way that helps students. Another model you can consider is the ADDIE model. We're not really going to go into much details of that today. So we're going to focus on the first step. So before you start, you want to have those learning objectives, those learning outcomes. This is what's going to drive the course, the unit, and the individual activity. And again, you're going to have different learning objectives for each of those. At the course level, you're going to have very broad objectives. What is the big picture of your course? You're going to have learning objectives at the unit level. What do students need to learn at that unit? And then finally, you're going to have different learning objectives for individual activities. What are students doing every day? Okay. And that helps you. That's your mission. That is your goal. That helps students see what are they doing in the class. So how do you design these learning objectives? And again, we're just going to do a quick review of this. So it is a statement with learning activities. So you start with, it needs to be measurable. That's important about your learning objective outcome. How are you going to measure that objective? How are students going to know whether they mastered that objective or not? And we use Bloom's taxonomy to help us with that measurement, okay? And we always start with students' will. And there is your action, Bloom's taxonomy, which I'll show you to you in a second. Generative AI nowadays, so ChatGPT, Copilot can help you generate these objectives. If you have no idea where to start, it is a good place to start. And then ultimately, you have the final words. If that objective doesn't work for you, then you can just discard it. But it is a good place for you to start. So here is our pyramid. A lot of you have seen it. If you were at previous NFL sessions yesterday, you probably saw it. There it is, your pyramid. We start at the very low level, remember, and it goes up to create. Just keep in mind, when we look at remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create, that is just the level of cognitive thinking that students are doing. We really can't, that's not really what we want, we measure. You can't really measure remembering. Therefore, we use those verbs. Those verbs on the right side you see in the pyramid. You have, for example, under remember, you have objectives like define. Can we measure define? Yes. Can we measure memorize? Yes. And this goes back again, I'm going to go back to Miriam's question, that quiz. When you decide what type of quizzes you're going to do, it's going to depend what do you want to test, right? What are you testing? Are you testing for memorization, or are you testing for more of an evaluation type of quiz? All right. And maybe it might not even be a quiz that you need for that objective. So if you, for example, want to cognitive thinking at the create level, take a look at all those verbs. We're looking at designing. Students are designing. Students are constructing. Students are developing things. So it really depends, where are you testing? And, you know, and there is not a formula that says, well, you just need to use verbs at the very bottom. There is not a formula that says you have to use the top. It depends on the context. It depends what students are learning at the time. Then after you've come up with those objectives and you've decided at which level you are going to be teaching that specific concept, then you can start aligning those assessments. All right, we can start looking at those assessments. How am I going to test those objectives? At what level am I testing? So let's do a really quick run through, and please share in the chat your answers. So take a look at this learning objective. Design a solution that utilizes Excel to analyze customer data. The assessment, a multiple choice test on Excel formulas. In the chat, is this assessment aligned with the objective? So in the chat, please put yes or no. Please engage with us. What do you think? Is it aligned? Are these two aligned? Good. I see responses in the chat. No, lots of no's, no's, no's. All right. Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. Yes, that is true. It is not aligned. All right. Do I have any volunteers? Anybody would like to unmute themselves to explain why is this not aligned? Feel free to unmute yourself.
I can take a try.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jamie.
Sure. So in the learning objective, it's asking to, or saying they're going to design these solutions, but then the assessment's just a multiple choice. So they're not designing anything. They're just selecting an option.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's great. That's right. You want to make sure that that assessment matches. Again, we go back to that pyramid. If you are writing an objective at this level, at the design level, you can't have an assessment at the remembering level. You can't have an assessment having them define or memorize it. And a multiple choice test really is not the best choice when you're looking at designing. Now, if you're looking at more like creating a product, that could be a better way to test for that. Thank you so much. All right, so then after you've come up with this alignment, you have your beautiful assessments ready to go. You have all these objectives set. Now you can start picking these teaching strategies. How am I going to teach it? Now is the fun part, right? How am I going to facilitate this learning? What instructional strategies am I going to use? And that's the reason why we're here this morning, because we're going to look at Canvas. Canvas, it can be a great system with great tools that you can use to facilitate this learning. You don't have to know every single feature in Canvas, but for example, if you can just do a quiz in Canvas, or if you just want to do a quick activity in Canvas, or you want to share links with students, Canvas is a great tool that is available to you to do that. Additionally, you get data from it, so you can actually see how are students learning. Are they mastering these objectives? Moving forward. Again, by designing this course, we want that student experience, right? We really want to help students to really engage in the class and help them with it. So this is what we just covered. So we looked at the backward designs. We looked at creating those learning objectives, aligning those objectives to assessment, and planning for those instructions to achieve outcomes. All right, so we're going to start looking at Canvas now. So we gave you that pedagogical overview. So we're going to focus on those teaching strategies. Okay, so we're going to look at number one, we're going to look at group works. Okay, so how can you use the group work setting in Canvas to help you assign groups for a class? So the idea of groups are important because it is a way to organize your class ahead of time. So you can incorporate this teamwork throughout the semester. Canvas can help you organizing that. Engagement, you want to create communication in class. You want to help students to have those 21st century skills that are needed in the modern world, right? That teamwork, collaboration, communication, all of those are important. And that's why we want to include group work as much as possible. So we are going to take a look at groups in Canvas. Overall in Canvas, you can use groups for discussions, assignments. It could be a collaborative space. Or if everything else fails, you can just create a group, have students log into Canvas, take a look at which group you're part of, and that could be it. And then you can do the rest of the group activity in class. It is like, again, it's just going to be a tool for you to use. So we're going to look at key terms before I do the demo. We're going to look at group sets versus groups. When we're looking at group sets, you are looking at an overall organization of groups. So you come up with this group, and it is just an overall, and you know that you're going to use this group structure for certain assignments. That's a group set. So for example, lab groups, discussion groups, final project groups. That is just the groups of all groups. When you look at groups, that is just the specific groups for that assignment. So within lab groups, I'm going to have group 1, group 2. It will make more sense when I start showing you in Canvas. All right, so I am going to share my Canvas course now so you all can see what I'm talking about. All right, can everyone see my Canvas course? Yes, awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So when we're looking at groups, here is your Canvas course. The first thing you go on the left side, your course navigation, you can go where it says people. And what you're going to see under people, you're going to see all your students in your course. As you can see, there is a little tab that says groups. When you click on groups, if you've never done groups in that course, it will be looking like this. When you create a group set, you are creating a group set of groups. So you can use this group set for any assignments that you create in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and create my first group set. And I can call this, I'm going to use this group set. I'm going to use it for group. I know I'm going to use this throughout the spring. So I'm going to call it Spring 2024 groups. I know this is my groups. I'm going to use them throughout the semester. And I'm ready for that. Now, allow self-sign up will require students to sign up themselves. It is really not an option you want to use because then you're going to have to wait for each student to sign up for a group, and you know how students are. So if you just want to go ahead and just do the work for them and just assign them into groups, it is ready to go here. So you have two options at this point. You have the option of manually creating the groups if you prefer, or you can have Canvas do the work for you. Okay, you don't need to do manually. You can have Canvas doing the work for you, and you have two options. You can split students by the number of groups. If you have a group, I want to create 10 groups, then you have that option, and Canvas will do that for you. If you rather split number of students per group, you can do that too. For our purposes, we're going to split students by the number of groups. So I want group structure. We're going to put 4 groups. We're going to do 5. Actually, let me do 4. So I create groups. We're going to do 4. Leadership. If you know you're going to be doing assigning roles within the groups, that you can actually assign a student group leader if you know you're going to have roles, that could be one to do. But for now, I'm just going to click 4. And there it is. Canvas is doing all the magic for me right now. It is creating my groups, and I'm just going to wait until my groups are created. I don't have to do anything. It's magical. It's doing the magic, and ta-da! Canvas has created 4 groups for me. Okay, and then as you can see, I have my 4 groups, and then I have my students right here. Each group has my 3 students, and if I click in each group, you can see how I have all my 3 students right there. And you can check. And now the great thing about this, you can use these groups for any assignments you have. You can use them. Now, if you decide to go with the manual, I'm going to show you the other options of the manual group assignment. If I decide to create groups later, then what you are going to see is that all your students will populate on the left side, and then you get to create those groups manually. So I'm going to create my first group number 1, and this is if you want to do it manually. And I just want to have 3 per group. And then you would have to drop those students manually. So that's what happens if you pick the create groups later. So I prefer this one. It is automatic, and I don't have to do any extra steps. So now I have my group. So what do I do with them? What can I do? Well, whenever you have those groups made, they're going to live here. If you can all just remember, they're always going to live under people for that semester. Whichever many groups you create, they're going to be right there. So then I go into, we're going to create an assignment. Show you all how this looks like. Okay, so I'll create a new assignment, and I'm just going to call it example, group assignment example. Okay. Scroll down over here. We're going to make sure that we're going to have an online submission. Then you can see right here, the option group assignment pops. And as soon as you click that group assignment option, it's going to ask you, what do you want to do, right? Do you have a group set? Remember, I created my Spring 2024 group, so I want to use that group. That's what I want to use. So I have it right there. So now when I create this assignment, I will automatically use those groups. Now, if I have not created any groups at all, I've never used any groups, or I never created one, I just need one group for this one assignment. You can actually create that right here as well, right away. Create group category. You can come up with on the fly, you can come up with a new group. You can create a group immediately. And then what Canvas will do, it will create groups for that particular assignment. And once you are done setting all that up, you just click save, and you have turned that assignment into a group assignment. Any questions? No questions. All right.
Actually, if you don't mind, Carlos, I'm sorry. This is David. I was going to ask a question. When you do the group assignments in Canvas, how are you monitoring the particular student's contribution, right? So you have a group, you have 3, one student enters it in, all students enter it in, it's assigned to them for kind of one initiative. Help me kind of understand the context of where you're going with that.
Yeah, it really depends on the type of assignment, right? So if you're doing an assignment like this one, like if it's just an online submission, you would need to be instruct students to what are they expected to do. Like if they are you having them upload, they will upload one assignment each, but then you have to specify exactly what you want them to do. That would have to be part of the instructions. With discussions, though, it's a little bit different. With assignments in general, you have to give them specific instructions of what each student is supposed to do, because each of them can submit something, but it might not be, the one student might not know. Like you said, you might not know if one student is doing all the work. So it's part of the instruction. You would have to be part of the instructions that needs to include. Now with the discussions, if you're doing group discussions, then each student has to contribute to the discussion within their group. And then in those discussions, you would see who has contributed and who hasn't within that group. In the past, what I've done, yeah.
Let me ask you a question, because
Yeah.
David, his intro inspired me already. So one of this involvement, this encouraging participation, I'm going to give an example, and I would like for either of you to comment, because I teach a materials class. It's a metallic materials class, and I try to inspire them by going on safari, right? Look for something that has corrosion around campus and bring me pictures. And I think historically I've had that as an individual exercise, and it shows because only half of the students participate. I really want all of the students to participate, and I do so under the auspices of an extra credit assignment. But the students who really need the help are the ones that don't do the assignment, the extra credit. The ones who kind of self-motivated are the ones that do the assignment. And I'm wondering, maybe if I did that as a group randomly through my class, then maybe I do get that inspiration. Maybe I do get them to participate, where I get a much higher, and that it's that repetition, I think, that helps them in understanding. And so I'm thinking exactly of using the group assignment for that, because I want them to meet each other, right? 2, I want them, it's a very large class, 100 students per lecture set. And I have 2 lecture sets, so 200 students, and I'm really trying to get a higher participation. And I'd appreciate, I know it may be going a little bit deeper, but I'm just trying to understand the context with regard to the idea of the groups, the idea of maybe rewarding the right behavior with using only the lowest grades, not always the highest grades, where you drop the highs. And really trying to increase that repetition and participation.
Yeah. David, that is a great question. So in the past, something that really works, that you can, whenever you're doing group work, something that works really well is at the very beginning, you can assign duties. So very first things, you can have a table of duties, and each student has to sign up for the duties. What part are they going to work on that big project? And that's your duty, and that's how you're going to be graded. I've seen that working by assigning jobs. Each student is in charge of some part of that group project. Another thing that I've seen that works a lot is to have a reflection component at the end of the group work activity. So every student within that group has to complete a reflection. They have to write down, what did you do for this group project? And if they're not able to justify their work, then that's when you have issues, and that's when you need to have the conversation, right, of why did you not do a work? Another thing that I've seen is just peer rating. So all the students within the group give each other a grade, and that could be another way to, create that accountability component within the group work. Does that help?
Yeah, very much. And I appreciate the idea of the reflection and maybe even the duties where maybe we have three. I'll think through that. Yeah, let me nibble on some of that or chew
Very
on
good
it,
question.
and I'll think about it. Thank you so much.
Can I jump in there too, Carlos?
Go ahead. Yeah.
And first of all, I'll apologize if you weren't in the launch session this morning. My weird camera angle, I apologize for that. I left my laptop at home, so I had to jump in on one of the student tech computers. They have a very weird camera angle. Another thing to think about there, which is beyond the scope of this session, are two tools that we have, Perusall and Perceptive. Perusall is great for social learning, where you can upload a component and students have to comment on it as a class, and Perceptive allows them to do exactly what Carlos was talking. It facilitates through the use of some AI tools, peer ratings. So in those large classes, Dave, that would be good. We would be happy to help you set up that and move forward with that through an individual consultation. But going into the weeds of those two is far beyond the scope of this session, but we're happy to help you with those options as well if there's something you want to explore.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that sounds really good.
We will have another session. We'll have in February, we have a collaborative learning session that's sponsored by the CTE. So you're welcome to attend to that one too. All right.
And we also have a Perusall Academy in February as well.
There you go. All right. So now that we talked about group work, let me just summarize, conclude what this section we talked about. Oh, let me go back. So we did talk about group work. It is important to you all. Collaborations, our students need that component. Our students need to learn how to collaborate. I mean, if you think about it, it's been a long 5 years since COVID started, and we need them to get back into collaborating. We need them to do teamwork. I mean, if you all think about it, these are critical skills that they'll need when they leave. Okay, they're gonna need it in the real world. Additionally, group work belongs to that high level of engagement in Bloom's taxonomy. Believe it or not, a lot of the group work that will occur, students are actually at the very top of the pyramid. A lot of the group work requires a lot of creating products, developing stuff. So that's huge. So, all right. So we covered group sets. We talked about groups. We look at viewing and editing, confirming groups. So now we're going to move to another topic. We're going to look at differentiated due dates and accommodations. All right, so the purpose of this is the flexibility. By adding these accommodations and this differentiated due dates, we are being flexible for those students that need those accommodations. We have students that will need extra time. We have students that will need extra attempts. And by incorporating these features of Canvas, you are meeting all the needs of students. And you will know who those students are if they need accommodations or not. So the purpose of this section is for you to get a little familiar with these features of Canvas that are available to you through the quizzes tool. So let's explore now. We're going to look at differentiated due dates first, and those differentiated due dates will apply to assignments, quizzes, and discussions. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to jump into my Canvas course. Okay, so here in my Canvas course, I'm going to use my first one. Whenever you're looking at your assignment, if you scroll down at the very bottom of your assignment, you have the option of assigning a different due date. So if you know you have a student that requires extra time, you can actually set it up for an assignment. You can actually set it up for that one student. That one student would get a difference. So everyone else gets the normal date. But then if I add here a different student, that one student will get, if they, you can decide what they need, right? If they need, you can decide that the student can turn it in an hour later. I just did this. You can decide the time that you want that student to have it. You can decide that time right here. So if they're gonna have, okay, this is not the friendliest time. They get 2 extra hours. I'll do that math. There we go. So now we know that this one student gets those extra 2 hours if that's what they need. That's not right. But yeah, so that one student, so that should be the 12. There we go. So that you assign, you gave that extra time to that one student. So if a student requires differentiated time, that's where you do that for assignment, specifically assignments. We are going to take a look at, so that's how you do it for assignments and discussions. We are going to look at more accommodations that you can do in the quizzes. All right, we're not going to go into all the details of classic versus new quizzes, but what you need to know about accommodations for both, if you are using classic quizzes will allow you to do accommodations. However, if you do those accommodations, you have to do them every single time for every quiz that you create. So practice classic quizzes, every classic quiz that you create will require you to add those accommodations. However, if you use new quizzes, you do it once, and it takes care of all your quizzes that you create in new quizzes. So that's the big difference between those two in that sense. So let's take a look at classic quizzes. How do you add those accommodations for classic quizzes? So after you've created your quiz, you've added the questions, you have saved, it will look like this. On the right side, you can see the option that says moderate this quiz. If I click and moderate this quiz, and again, I'm doing this in classic quizzes, you can see that you can add the accommodations for the student, whatever accommodations they need. So if I click in that little pencil, I can add, if that student requires an extra attempt, if they can get an extra attempt, you can put that in there. If that student requires extra time, for example, they require 30 minutes, and again, these are accommodations that these students, we need to give the accommodations to this student. So I click save. You can now see that one student will get an extra attempt, and it will get 30 extra minutes on each attempt. And again, because I'm in classic quizzes, that only applies to this one specific quiz. If I were to create another classic quiz, then I would have to repeat the same process for the one student that needs those accommodations. Now, they look a little bit different when I go into new quizzes. If I go into new quizzes, again, my quiz is done, everything is set, everything looks good. So I go to the very bottom where it says build. And what you are going to be able to see is this interface, new quizzes looking. You'll have all these tabs at the very top, the build page where you create your questions. You have your settings where you change your settings for the quiz. But if I go to the moderate tab, you can see I can add those accommodations for the students. I can click moderate, and I can add additional attempts. Again, whatever accommodations you need to add to those students, you can add them right here. And once you are done, you are good to go. Those accommodations will be set. So I'm going to add, for example, this person will require additional time. We're going to add extra 30 minutes. And there it is. That accommodation has been added. And because it is a new quiz, this accommodation will apply to any other new quiz that you create. Any questions at this time?
So Carlos, this is David. I was going to ask, when you extend, so when we get through the Disability Resource Center, we get, and we have prescribed, it's a 50-minute quiz, maybe bad example, but follow me, 50-minute quiz, and they get, 50% more than that. And so you're saying that we could incorporate that, because I haven't moved my exams or anything completely to Canvas yet.
Okay.
And one of the reasons I haven't is because of exactly this. I have easily 10%, if not 15% of my students that require some type of support. And so this can be audited by the Disability Resource Center. And we can use it as a standard for administration of quizzes or exams or whatever where they're allotted X% more time.
Okay, so are you using classic quizzes or new quizzes?
So I've just been using quizzes and 5 questions, very simple quizzes. If I start adopting this and they're at the Disability Resource Center and they get additional time, that's where I was trying to make sure that I can reconcile it back with their allowed amount of extra time.
Yes, that would count as the, and CJ, correct me on this. Yes, that would count as their accommodations being met if you adjust their time.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, for
CJ?
sure. It absolutely counts as part of that. That's those accessibility features were one of the main reasons for adopting Canvas. So yes, those absolutely do qualify under the disability resources allotments.
Oh, thank you.
And we have one more question.
Yes, we have a question.
Yeah, this is Lance. I've used the classic quizzes and experienced, Carlos, what you were talking about is every quiz I have to go in and do those accommodations. So I'm very intrigued with the new quiz. So here's a question. Under the classic quiz, it's been my experience that you have to publish the quiz before you can go in and do the moderation. Is that also true for the new quiz? So in other words, to do accommodations with using the new quiz, do you actually have to publish the quiz first, or do you know?
CJ, you've explored new quizzes.
I can jump in there.
A lot lately.
Yeah, yes, I have explored new quizzes a lot lately. No, that's a great question, Lance. You do not have to publish. In fact, if you just go, and I think Carlos may be doing this, Carlos, if you just go create a brand new classic quiz, or a new quiz rather, you should be able to, once we're there, and you can just give it a generic name there, Carlos, and then go to the build tab.
It's two.
And if we go to that build tab there, you're going to see, Lance, at the top. It's obviously it's functions a little bit different. There is the moderate tab is right there.
Yeah.
And so at this point, obviously there's nothing in the quiz other than the title. You can moderate. So you could create essentially the first quiz for the semester, add the accommodations at this point, and then save it and update from there as needed.
Okay.
Now I will say, and making the switch to new quizzes is something that you want to be thoughtful about. There again, we can have a consultation about that depending on how your quizzes are structured. One of the main things right now is if you generate a lot of Excel data like CSV files from classic quizzes, you can't get those from new quizzes yet. That's still in development at Canvas. So that's a point we see a lot of instructors don't want to switch because of that.
Okay.
There are some other factors. That's the biggest one right now though. So I'm happy to talk with you more about that beyond or outside of this session. But yes, to your initial question, you can make the changes without publishing the first quiz.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. Any other questions? Okay, all right, we are going to move on to the next section. All right, let me share my screen again. All right, so here we are. So we talked about differentiation of those different accommodations. David did brought up a great point. He did talk about it is part of being in compliance with the law. It is important, so make sure to have those accommodations set. The other component that it's a lot of about compliance as well, and Canvas, it's a great tool. Again, it helps you with this little components that probably you don't think about it. The next part is accessibility. Canvas is great to ensure that you have an accessible course. You can produce material that is accessible for all students. So why is it important? Number one, it is good for everyone, right? Make sure that we use the right fonts, make sure that we're using the right colors, that font is not too small, that it's easy to read, making sure our documents can be read through a screen reader for those students that need it. And it enhances that engagement component as well, because you know that you're boosting learning for all students. And then finally, the compliance piece. It is, we need to make sure our courses are accessible. It is regulated by the law. So we're gonna take a look first. So there are two tools that can help you with this accessibility component of your course. We are gonna look at the native accessibility checker, the one that is built into Canvas. We're gonna take a look at that one. So whenever you are creating some sort of assignment or writing within Canvas, there is this built-in feature that can help you assess accessibility. So can everyone see my course right now? Yes. Everybody seeing my course? Maybe? Yes? Okay.
Looks
cool.
like you're up. Yes.
Thank you so much. All right. So if I go into, and I'm just going to use pages, I'm going to create a new page. And my page will have some information for students. I'm going to create a new page. And this is just going to be an example. So this is what we call the rich content editor. Pages, guys, is a great way for you to create information for students, deadlines information. If you want to share links, Pages is a great feature for you to use. So for example, if I start typing here, I'm just going to type, thank you. You can see at the very bottom, there is this person, this little circle with a person. Sometimes when you do things that are not accessible, something will happen. So in the case, I want to change my thank you. I'm going to use font color yellow. Oh no, take a look at that. The little person down here gave you a warning. You did something. Something needs your attention. So what that is a built-in feature of Canvas with accessibility. It lets you know, hey, there is something wrong with your text that you probably should check out to make it more accessible. So when I click there it is. Number one, my first issue is text is small. With that color font, it is too small. It's going to be really hard to read. And then the color, it lets you know about colors. So that lets you know that you need to fix that. So how do I fix it? Let me exit out. So I know it is a color. So what I'll go ahead and do, I'm going to change it to black again. Now you see that error is gone. And that is a built-in feature for Canvas. If you add an image, Canvas will let you know. So let me see if I can add an image. Course image. Okay, I'm going to use this gene expression image. Why not? So there is my gene expression simulation. As you can see, it gives me an error. And I check there and it's letting me know you need to add an alt text for your image. So I'll go ahead and we're going to call it a simulation image. So if I know what the image was about, you can do that. If you're just using an image for decoration purposes, you can just click that button and that takes care of it. So once I change my alt text, I'll click apply. Now that error is gone. So that is the built-in feature for Canvas, and it is active at any time that you're using Canvas. The next one that can help you to check for accessibility, you want to continue? Yes. We have the other tool, which is called Ally. And Ally provides you with an overall score for your course when it comes to accessibility. It will run through every file, every image, every page in your course. And what it will do, it will look for that accessibility. Are there any accessibility issues in your course that you need to take care of? As you can see, and you get a score. So if you go into your accessibility report in your course at this point in time, you will see a score. 95% of my score, and it lets me know how many images I have used, the pages, and if I scroll down, it will give you the content with the easiest issues to fix, those should be easy. So those might be the ones that you can start with. For example, images. Look at how many images I have that are not accessible. And a lot of the times these images have to do with being the correct, forgot to put it as a decoration, or do I need to add an image? So things like that, and that's what this tool will do for you. Here at Texas A&M, the biggest issue we see is images. Images that are not properly alt tagged, and the other issue that we've seen often is PDF. If you use a lot of PDFs files, those usually have a lot of accessibility issues because they have to be modified to be accessible. So that is something to keep in mind for you as you move forward. The accessibility component. Do we have any questions at this time?
I am right now, I have a question, sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
go
right,
Yeah, I'm actually opening my Canvas and doing things simultaneously as you were. I don't have accessibility thing on my Canvas. Do you know why?
You
Like,
don't have, I miss it. You don't have access to,
okay, you just showed something with accessibility report, right? So I
yes.
have all announcement, modules, grade, media site collection, course evaluation, syllabus discussion assignments. I don't have that accessibility report on my Canvas list.
Okay, that is a good question. Let me show you how to do that. Just go here.
And while you're doing that, Carlos, would you mind sharing the name of the course in the chat, and I will do some behind the scenes work just in case there is something weird going on.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to show you all where we're going to find this. So I'm going to show my screen one more time. All right, so at home, can everyone see my screen now? Okay. All right, so now on the left side, you should go into settings, be able to go to settings. And then under,
Do we have
hello?
to go to dashboard first, or how do we?
Did you go in your course? Yep, just pick a course, one of your
So we have
courses.
to go into the courses.
Yes,
Okay.
you have to go in your actual course. Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Let me step back a little bit. Okay, so here's my dashboard. So I'm gonna go into that one course,
Mhm.
and then you scroll at the very bottom where it says
Mhm.
settings,
Yes.
and then you go into navigation.
Navigation, yes.
And then if you scroll down, you should be able to see the accessibility report tool. You might need to scroll down a lot of it. Do you see it?
Yes, I found accessibility report and I enabled it, right?
Okay. Okay, so you bring it up. You can just bring it up. And once you're done, make sure you click save though. If you don't click save, it won't save it.
Oh, okay. 1 second. So what things do you have on the left side of your settings? Can I check once? Home announcements, attendance. Oh, I don't even have attendance.
You
Oh.
don't need to, yeah, you don't need to. Mine it's been a little modified, but attendance usually is not necessary to have it on. I had it on because I had to try something with it. But this is just a practice course. But now the important thing is, can you click in the accessibility report now?
Okay. Yes, I think so.
Do you see it now? Can you see all the stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Great question. Good question. Any other questions?
So what is this accessibility report like used for? I mean, I've never used it. It wasn't even on my.
Okay. So accessibility report, it's used for you to try to remediate your course as much as possible. I mean, if you have like over, for example, 500 items in your course, you know, it's unrealistic that you're gonna get through all those fixes. But for example, if you think you can make some easy fixes to your course, the more accessible, the better, right? So if you can spend some time fixing the issues that you know you can fix easily, that's what this report is to help you make decisions about what can I remediate easily. And I can tell you images, if you want to remediate images, that's the easiest way to start. The more complex, I would say, is your PDF files. That is very complex to remediate. So that's the purpose of this whole thing. It lets you know how accessible your course is. Does that make sense?
Wow, I had 105 content issues. Oh my God. Okay.
And we can always help you here at the CT. We can always help you with if you need help with figuring out what all those mistakes mean or all those issues. Okay, any other questions related to accessibility? Okay, all right, so let's move on to the last part of this. And finally, you have created a wonderful course. You have, am I sharing my, yep. Okay, you have created a wonderful course. You have all your activities set. You have all the links ready to go. It looks amazing. So the last step you really want to do is to explore it from a student view. You want to do that because you want to make sure that your students, what do they see? You want to have that user experience. Is it easy to navigate? Can students access everything? So you can preview your assessments. How is it going to look like? Communication. So you want to have that experience before you can actually publish it to your students, before that first day, and students start emailing you and asking you questions about why something is not working. So how do you access this student view? I'm going to go back to my course now. So if you all can see it, if you go to home in my course, the very top, you're going to see that student view button. Once you click on that student view button, you're going to see that your screen turns into this magenta purple color. And that lets you know that you have entered the student view. Madhu, I hope I said your name right, asked about the buttons that I have enabled on my course. You see that? This is the only ones that students will be able to see.
Where was the student view bottom? I'm sorry, I
I'll go
didn't.
back. Absolutely. Let me go back. So you go home you're in
I'm
your
on-
course. You're in your course, you go home,
Yeah, I'm at home. right
and
now.
then student view at the very top. You should be able to see a student view. Do you see it?
No, oh yeah, oh actually, yes.
So you click that button, and then it takes you to this magenta screen. And then you can actually click throughout and see, okay, let me take a look. How do my modules look like? Let me see. Look, there is my modules. My module 1 is good to go. Week 2, ignore some of my order. You can check the announcements that you have. Anything that you have published is right there. Grades, how the grades might not look. Yep, there we go. What I've submitted as a student. And that is how you navigate throughout it. And then once you are done checking that, you click, you leave the student view, and then you're back to your instructor view. Again, we want to make sure that you all are looking at it. You're looking at that. How does it feel from a student view? And if you feel like something doesn't make sense while you're testing this, I mean, it is still, you can still fix it. It's not, students are not in the course yet, and you can still think about it like a student. How does it feel? What happens? Is there anything that needs to be fixed? You can even ask a colleague to help you. Hey, does it make sense? Does the flow of my course make sense? Okay. All right, I will open the floor. Any questions? Okay, so let's talk about support. You all, we have so much support for you all. Please make sure we're using these resources. We are always happy to help you all. So there is 2 ways that you can reach out to us. First, if you have a very technical question related to, for example, my gradebook is not setting up right, or you are having issues accessing something, we ask you to send a message to support@instructor.com. And if you know that that is a TAMU system issue, you can type in the message, please escalate to TAMU support. Describe your issue. Guys, we really want to emphasize this. Please describe your issue as best as possible. There is a lot of expertise within the department, and we really want to make sure that you get the right support. So the more details you add into the issue, what's happening, the better support you will receive, because otherwise it is very hard to find who's the right person to support you. So then, and then it goes to the LMS support team. And if it is technical, they will take care of whatever issue you're having. Now, if you know it is more pedagogy related, like you are trying a new strategy with Canvas, if you want to learn how to use quizzes to improve instructions, or if you are having issues with, I don't know, creating modules within Canvas for a student learning experience, that is more of a pedagogy style. So in that case, you can reach out to cte@tamu.edu and schedule a consultation with us, and one of us will help you with this learning experience that you're trying to set up in Canvas. So that is, so please make sure you reach out to us if you have any questions, if you need any help. We are here to help you. Here are some more of the upcoming events that we're going to be offering throughout the semester. We're going to have a lot of Canvas related. We have Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. If you have any questions about course design, we have collaborative learning, universal design for learning, transparent grading. There's going to be rubrics involved and some generative AI. So all of this is coming at the CTE. So please register for future events. Any other questions at this time? So if you all, last thing we have for you all, if you can provide CJ share a survey link in the chat. So if you all can fill that out for us, that will be so much helpful. We really want to know if we're doing well, if we're supporting you the right way, and if you have any feedback to provide us so we can continue to improve our practice, please fill out that survey. And at this time, that's all we have for you all. Thank you so much for stopping by and spending an hour and a half of your time with us, and we hope you have a great day.